Hi, I'm Dr. Angela Mackay, chiropractor and naturopathic physician, and I am here to talk to you this whole month about GI health. So we're going to be talking about the gut and how to get it healthy, how to keep it healthy, and how to have your digestion run smoothly. So for the very first part of this month, I want to talk about getting into a rest and digest state. So most of us spend most of our time running in a sympathetic fight or flight mode, and you are not able to readily digest your food in this state. So when you're under a state of stress, your body's pumping out cortisol, things happen in your body that are not geared towards digestion, because why worry about absorbing your lunch if you have to fight off a bear and you might not live for the next half hour? So you want to focus on the blood flow going to the muscles because you need them to either run away or fight and get yourself someplace safe. So when you are trying to eat, you want to get yourself into a rest and digest state. We weren't meant to spend all day, every day in this crazy fight or flight state, and it makes everything really challenging, right? So we weren't meant to be stuck under constant stress. We were meant to fight off the bear or run away and then get someplace safe and chill out. Those hormones that course through your body when you're in this extreme state of stress, they stay around for anywhere, if you're really well adapted and you're really flexible and you haven't had a lot of chronic stress in your life, they last about 6 hours. If you've had a really stressful time growing up, if you've had a lot of chronic stress as an adult, those hormones can last longer for up to 36 hours. And that's just assuming that you don't have another stressor pile on top of what you're already going through that restarts that clock. So you want to get into a place of rest and digest so that your blood flow is going to your GI tract and interfacing with your gut and absorbing all those nutrients that you can use in your body. If you're really stressed out all the time, one of the things you can do is exercise, because that mimics the fighting or the fleeing. You can also do breathing or meditation or other things to switch gears, because unfortunately, once the fight or flight mode is turned on, there's no switch to automatically turn it back off. Right? It has to, the parasympathetic, the rest and digest mode has to come up gradually as the sympathetic fades away. So you can help burn through the sympathetic a little bit with some techniques that you can do to self-soothe. It's no accident that other cultures generally all have some sort of prayer or Thanksgiving tradition before sitting down to a meal, because it centers you and focuses you more into the rest and digest state to help you be able to assimilate and digest your food properly. So if you're having a lot of fatigue because you're not absorbing the nutrients very well because you're always in fight or flight, that may not just be your adrenals getting pooped out because you're stressed. That may also be that you're not getting the nutrition that you need to fuel your body. If you're having a lot of bloating, cramping, food sits in your stomach like a rock, or you're having any heartburn, reflux, constipation, diarrhea, any of those things should be a motivation for you to change your patterning around how you approach sitting down to eat and trying to get into that rest and digest state. So I want to take you through the case of Susie. That's not her real name. And she's a 27-year-old woman. She didn't have any problems with digestion ever before. And then all of a sudden, last Thanksgiving, she got food poisoning. She and her mother-in-law both got sick. Nobody else got sick, fortunately. Her mother-in-law recovered, but she was continuing to have just horrible nausea every single day, a little bit of bloating and pain in her stomach, and things were just not great for her. She was having a lot of reflux. She was sleeping on a wedge at night to prop her up, so that would help the reflux, and then it was hard to sleep because she was in this weird position. It was just really uncomfortable. So from November of last year until about June of this year, she was suffering with these symptoms. She'd gone to her primary care doctor, and they did some initial testing, that was really good. One of the things that they looked at was they did an ova and parasite ×3, so they were looking to see if there were any critters living in her gut. So the bloating and the loose stools, constant nausea were still continuing. They had put her on some proton pump inhibitors to help with the feeling of heartburn or GERD. It was kind of working, but she still didn't seem to help the nausea or the bloating or anything else. So we tested for SIBO, which stands for small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, and we're going to have a whole week dedicated to SIBO. So we're going to talk lots more about this in the next week or so. We did that testing here. She had a kit that she took home and did the test at home and then mailed in, and it came out flat. When you have SIBO, you have bacteria that were living in her small intestine, and they were living off the food that she was eating. And as they eat that food and they start to metabolize that food, they have their own life cycle, so that they're off-gassing and doing their daily living thing in your gut, and it causes a lot of problems, and it causes some inflammation and all sorts of other symptoms, including all the symptoms she was experiencing. So she took that test. So that told me that she had a special kind of SIBO. The bacteria that she had that were living in her GI tract were producing hydrogen sulfide gas. that was causing her a lot of disruption. As you can imagine, hydrogen sulfide is not something you want to have in your body. For her, we did 6 weeks of herbal treatment, and we combined that with 3 weeks of antibiotic treatment. We changed her diet so that she was on a low sulfur diet, so that the little critters didn't have anything to eat. Was also taking apple cider vinegar to make her stomach more acidic, so that helps fend off the bugs a little bit by changing the pH and helping you digest your food better, as well as digestive bitters. So she maintained the apple cider vinegar and the bitters and came off of antibiotics and slowly came off of the herbs and started gradually increasing her diet back to normal by reintroducing one new thing every week. And she is now back to an almost completely full diet. No pain, no difficulty whatsoever. She was on the thin side to begin with and had lost an additional like 20 pounds. So she has regained some of that weight back and she's feeling great. She's got a lot of energy now, and she's back to her old self and super excited to be through that period in her life. I'm Dr. Angela Mackay, chiropractor and naturopathic physician. It is Wake Up Wednesday, and this week we're talking about gut health and how to get into a state of rest and digest to make things go smoothly in your GI tract so you don't even have to think about it. So if you're not intermittent fasting, and I know some of you out there are doing intermittent fasting, and that's fine, it's great, lots of research behind that. If you're not intermittent fasting, but you do eat breakfast, we've been talking about how stress adversely affects your ability to digest and absorb nutrition. So you want to make sure that you give yourself enough time in the morning for breakfast. That means you've got all your hygiene stuff done, you've got time to make breakfast, you've got time to sit peacefully and eat breakfast without rushing and being all harried and trying to get to work or wherever you need school, wherever you need to go. So number one, start with breakfast and make it a peaceful time. There are different ways to do it, but I do want you to create enough time in your schedule so that when you wake up for breakfast, you've got time to digest it peacefully and absorb the nutrition that you're ingesting. Some people have told me that they really don't like breakfast. They don't like breakfast foods. They're too fatty, or they're too carby, or they just don't feel very good. They're a little like in the morning when they get up. And so for that, if that is you, I recommend several different options so that you can still enjoy a good start to your day with breakfast. One is congee. We have a video on how to make congee, and it is basically like a rice porridge. And you can do all sorts of things to it to adapt it to however your eating style is. I make it in the crock pot overnight, so it's nice and warm and ready for me in the morning. I like overnight oatmeal, and that's one of the things that I make as the weather starts to turn more fall-like. And so I have a small crock pot, and I just do 1 or 2 cups of oats to 2 to 4 cups of water. So 1 cup of oats to 2 cups of water, and I put it on low overnight. The oats get really mushy. They're not very chewy like if you make it on the stove, but I like it that way. And you can put a variety of things in it, like oat milk, milk, if you can tolerate dairy, fruit, all sorts of things you can put in there. Again, also nice and warm and ready as soon as you are ready for breakfast, and you don't have to think about it too much ahead of time. In addition to that, some people really need some protein in the morning. It helps them feel full. It gives them the energy to get through the day so that they're not instantaneously hungry. Like when I was a kid, I loved pancakes. But if I ate pancakes in the morning, I would feel gross for a little bit, and then I would be starving by 10 o'clock. So I recommend that you have some kind of protein in the morning. It can be nuts. You can put those in your oatmeal or whatever you're eating. It can be anything that you want, a boiled egg if you tolerate eggs. So some kind of protein with your morning breakfast is really helpful to give you the energy to get through the day. Some people ask me about coffee. So I don't have a problem with coffee. I love coffee. I think it's delicious. I don't have it past 2 in the afternoon. It can be really acidic for some people, and some people don't tolerate it very well because of the acidity of it. Some people prefer to have it after eating, so they have something in their stomach first before adding more acid to their system. If you don't tolerate coffee well, there are alternatives. If you just have to like the warm beverage and the morning ritual of coffee. So now there are mushroom alternatives that can be quite tasty, as well as chicory or other roasted roots that are ground into a coffee-like substance that are nice and aromatic and warm and wonderful in the morning. And then additionally, make sure that you're getting enough sleep, because like we talked about in the beginning of this video, you want to make sure that you're not starting out your day in fight or flight. So make sure that you're waking up well rested and feeling nice and peaceful, and give yourself plenty of time to give yourself something to eat to nourish your body and start your day. So the first thing you want to do, we talked about in the first video, was to maximize the chances that you're going to be in a parasympathetic rest and digest state. So that is doing exercise, managing stress, meditation, maybe saying grace of some sort, regardless of what your religious background is, before meals, but just sitting down and centering yourself and being in a peaceful space to eat lunch. Making sure that you take the time to sit down and eat, And we talked about breakfast and how important that can be. Make sure that you're not just grabbing something as you're rushing out the door. If you're working from home or if you're in the office, do not eat at the same place that you're working. So pick yourself up and sit at the kitchen table, or sit in a different spot at the kitchen table if you're working at the table. But create a different space that is just about eating and digestion and relaxation, that has nothing to do with your workspace. That can be really important for setting the stage for good digestion. Remember that pool business where your mom told you don't eat and then you can't swim for a couple hours because you'll get a cramp and drown? That's not necessarily true, but when you are active right after you eat, all that blood that should be going there and picking up the nutrition from your gut lining, you want that to stay there to pick up that nutrition. You don't want to shunt all that blood out to the muscles for you to go swimming or running or doing whatever. Likewise, do not eat while you're standing up and walking around. If you're going to be eating, have a seat and sit down and let yourself digest your food, and then give yourself a little bit of time, and then you can go run around. I took life saving in college as one of my gym classes, and I had a burrito for breakfast because it was college and was like microwave burrito was the thing. And then I had to swim for time to make my time trials to stay in the class. And I made my time trial, but I can tell you the immediately after the time trial was not a pretty sight. So you need your blood flow to the GI tract to be steady there and not shunted other places so that you can digest your food. Digestion starts in the mouth. So preferably, if you can, be around the food that's being made as much as possible. You want to see it, you want to smell it, you want to experience it, because from the get-go, you start to get hungry when you start cooking or you start smelling foods cooking, and that starts salivation, which is where digestion starts, right? You have this whole system set up and your body anticipates that food is coming. So you start creating saliva, you start creating some stomach acid, and you start the process of digestion. Your body starts to expect the food coming. Along with that, you want to make sure you chew. I had a teacher in naturopathic school who used to say, chew your food 31 times. And he would always pick a weird odd number, I think it was 31, so that you would count and keep that in your head. I'm not going to tell you to say 31 times exactly, but make sure you're chewing it well so it's in a mostly liquid state. Don't swallow something that's a lump. You don't want to drink a lot of water or other liquids while you're eating. Water is going to dilute your digestion. It's going to dilute your stomach acid, and it's good to have drinks separate from your food. So as much as I think it's important to stay hydrated, you don't want to do that with your food for the most part. And then enjoy your time eating with some friends or family members without arguments or disagreements as much as possible, and have that time to come together and have a positive experience. That's going to lead to better digestion and better nutrition and absorption. Finally, you should stop eating in the evening at least 2 hours before bedtime. You want to time this so that you're not going to bed hungry, because it's really hard to sleep if you're hungry, but you also don't want to eat right before bed. In the same way that blood goes to your muscles when you have to get up and move around, and that blood's not available for digestion, when you're sleeping, even though you're not necessarily moving around, that blood flow doesn't really go towards digestion. Everything slows down, digestion slows, and you just basically have like a rock of food in your stomach while you're sleeping, which isn't conducive to sleep, and it's not conducive to digestion. So make sure that you cut off your eating time a couple hours before bed. Hi, I'm Dr. Angela Mackay, chiropractor and naturopathic physician, and it's Friday favorites time. So we talked a little bit about breakfast. I have some good breakfast ideas for you. I talked a little bit about miso soup and congee, so we've got some links for that. I also really love egg cups. So they're like mini quiches that you make and put in muffin tins, and my daughter and I make them on Sundays so that we have them quick to go and put in the microwave or heat up or just eat cold, and have that in the morning without too much fuss. If you have trouble in the mornings, you don't know what else to do, you don't want something heavy, smoothies are a great option. I don't like a lot of overly processed foods, but in smoothies I put oats in them. If you're grain free, you don't have to do that. You can do protein powders. Again, I don't like highly processed stuff, but a little bit of protein powder won't kill you. I do recommend pairing that though with some protein. So a handful of nuts is great if you don't have a lot of time for anything else. Crock pot oatmeal, which I talked about already. You put in 1 cup of oats for 2 cups of water and cook it on the crock pot on low. If you have only got a really big crock pot, like a chicken or turkey size crock pot, you will not probably be able to use that crock pot for this recipe, because if it's spread too thin along the bottom, you will end up with just a big old oatmeal crisp thing that is inedible. So I have a separate, smaller, like 1 quart crock pot for this that I make the oatmeal with. Otherwise, some tips that I use frequently with people are apple cider vinegar. So sometimes this aids in digestion if your stomach acid is a little bit low. I like to mix 1 tablespoon in 1/3 cup of water and have that about 20 minutes before eating to stimulate your own stomach acid and digestive juices to start coming online. If this aggravates your throat at all or gives you heartburn in any way, you want to stop doing it. But for the most part, this can be really helpful as a digestive aid. Swedish bitters or digestive bitters are another thing that you can use instead. So if the apple cider vinegar doesn't work for you, bitters also stimulate your digestion and can get things going that way to make your digestion better. Finally, I want to talk about papaya enzymes. You may have seen these on the shelf. I like them a lot better than most other things for the occasional heartburn. I don't get heartburn generally myself, but I did have it during the 3rd trimester of my first pregnancy, and it was miserable. So papaya enzymes are generally very safe. They're safe to use in pregnancy, and they taste kind of like sweet tarts, and you can get them on the shelf at New Seasons or Whole Foods or maybe even Freddy's in the natural section. So those are tasty and they work really well. And then finally, if you're really struggling, sometimes a fast is in order. So if you've got a lot of inflammation going on, we've talked about fasting in another video when we were talking about detoxification. And fasting can be really important if you're having a lot of inflammation, you're feeling absolutely miserable, you want to shift your diet from what you've been eating to something else completely different, and you need something as a transition. Just giving yourself a digestive break for a day or two can be really beneficial. Now, fasting doesn't mean juice fasting because that's generally a lot of sugar, and you do want to stay hydrated, so you want to drink lots of water during a fast. If you're feeling terrible, stop doing it. But over time, if you fast long enough, it actually stimulates your body's manufacture of stem cells, and those stem cells come back online and do a lot of repair work for you and can be very beneficial that way. So there are times and places when a fast is appropriate. Generally speaking, if you feel like you need a fast, then I would really recommend having that be supervised by a physician. But think about it as an option if everything else is not working, and then talk to somebody, a professional physician, who can help you through it. All right, those are my Friday favorites. I will talk to you again next week.